Welcome to the video summary of the wood floor restoration work at James and Dollie Madison's Montpelier outside Orange, Virginia. Montpelier sits on a 2,500-acre estate. The original house was built in 1765 by James Madison's father. It stayed within the family until 1844. This is the look, or the house as it was looked originally when Madison Sr. built it in 1765. It was a large brick structure and one of the largest brick structures in that area of Virginia at that time. James Madison and his new wife, Dollie, moved back to Montpelier around the turn of the 19th century and did an expansion on the house, and this is what it looked like at that time. And then later on, during his presidency, it underwent its final expansion, and this was how it looked at the time the estate was sold in 1844 after James and Dollie Madison's death. Its final iteration was after the DuPont family bought it in 1901 and made extensive expansions, and this was the state of the house at the time the restoration work started in 2003. Of course, our focus was on the restoration work on the wood floors at Montpelier, and the next series of photographs will give you a good indication of the condition of the floor when we started the work in 2008, in June of 2008. Interestingly enough, as old as the floors were, they had never ever been sanded, and this is quite remarkable for a structure, a residential structure of that age. It had an awful lot of accumulation of materials that had been deposited on the floor over the last 150 years, and it had just been put there and left to sit. As you can see from these various photographs, the condition varied from one room to the next, and what was consistent though was just a high level of accumulation of old finishes. They discolored, aged, and worn at different rates. And in some areas, this next shot is in the master bedroom area, we started noticing the only tooling or hand tooling marks in the entire structure. And if you look at these, it appears as if the floor has been gone over with some sort of planing device. There might have been some type of water damage that somebody was trying to level or smooth out, but these were the only marks of any work being done on the floors at all. It's quite unusual to see a floor that age that has never been sanded, and this just indicated the historic value of the floor. This shot was in a small room off the dining room, and that section, the lighter section there, had actually been covered by a stairwell going up to the second floor. And we saw a lot of this where walls had been installed. We assume that most of this happened during the DuPont era, but you can't be sure. And all of these variations were uncovered as walls and partitions were removed to get the home back to its 1820 version, which was the focus of the restoration. Before any restoration work starts, we always test and sample to make sure that the products we use will in fact remove the old coatings. We put the chemical on the old finish and we put it back into solution, which allows us to manipulate it and then clean the old finish off, and we get back down to the raw wood. This is the longleaf yellow pine, and as you can see, we're down to raw wood, and that wood was probably milled on site back in the 1760s. We started our restoration work in the master bedroom using passive refinishing, a non-aggressive form of restoration that does not require any sanding. The chemical is the darker area in the middle of the room. We put the old coatings back into solution and then remove them, and then you can see we're back down to bare wood. You'll see a number of work in progress photos here. There's the chemical on the left side. It's dissolving the old coating and again putting it back into solution so we can remove it. In this next photograph at the top, you see where the old finishes have been removed. The wood looks lighter, it's raw. In the lower half of the photograph, the coating is still in place on the floor. And back to the master bedroom. On the left side, you see the old finish prior to its removal. On the right side, we're down to the raw wood. And then finally, we go back down to the parlor, and you can see what the room looks like once all the coatings are removed. When old floors aren't sanded, they start telling stories, and there were plenty of stories being told at Montpelier. This is in an upstairs hallway, and you can see the color disparity there. The light, very light look, is where a wall was put in place, and that story will be told for many centuries to come. In another area by the fireplace, we see the rust marks from probably a metal bucket that was put there in case the fire needed to be doused. When we move down to Dollie's favorite area, we see again the outline of where a floor cloth was probably tacked in place, and you can see the rust marks from the nails holding it in place, and it's slightly discolored underneath because moisture would have gotten underneath there. Now we've got a damaged spot in the floor. It would have been covered by a metal plate tacked in place, and you can clearly see all of the rust marks from the metal and the nails holding it in place. The best story, though, was up on the second floor in James Madison's study. As we uncovered and took off the old finishes, we started uncovering what appeared to be ink spots in an interior wall, which would have been a perfect place for a desk. Now just let your imagination run wild. You're standing in the study of the man who had a tremendous amount of input to the U.S. Constitution, and you're seeing ink spots on the floor. This is the value of restoring a floor without sanding it. You're not erasing history. This is how the floors looked once we got all the old finishes off and got down to bare wood. They had a very light whitewashed look, and that is of course the pine. You can see it has incredible lengths. Most of the pieces went from one wall all the way to the other, no head joints. And we got all the finish off and got down to the bare wood. At this point, we could have done anything we wanted to, but to get it back to the 1820s look, most of the rooms were left, the floors were left raw. No finishes were applied because that's how they were treated when the Madisons were in the house. So when you walk in there and you see the raw wood, that's how the Madisons would have seen it in 1820. The only rooms that had any material applied to them were some of the downstairs formal areas. Now this is known because it was discovered in some of the correspondence from people who visited Montpelier while Madison was president and after he left, that the floors were waxed. So that's what was applied to the floors to replicate the appearance in 1820. And you can see just how dramatic the change in color was on the wood. I want to finish with some very nice photographs that were generously supplied to me by the Montpelier Foundation. And this is what you would see if you were to visit Montpelier today. And it is also what would have been seen by James and Dollie Madison during their lifetime when they were, after they had left the White House, after they left Washington and were living out their lives in Virginia. Montpelier is a stunning place, and it's a beautiful, beautiful restoration project, and one that the National Trust for Historic Preservation characterized as one of the most important restoration projects of the last 50 years and of the next 50 years. I was very fortunate to have both of my brothers work with me, Howard, my older brother, and David, my younger brother. We did the entire restoration work on the floors at Montpelier in 2008. If you're in the area of Charlottesville or Orange, Virginia, it is worth your effort to stop by and see Montpelier. It is a wonderful, wonderful estate, and you can find out more by visiting their website. It's a great website, very interactive. I hope you enjoyed this summary, and I hope you will take the time to visit Montpelier if you're in the area. Take care, and I do appreciate your watching this.